Hello and welcome to Redeemable. I'm your host, Clevelyn.
And I'm Kenneth.
Together, we are here to share the story of a man who spent years on death row and how his journey led to redemption, faith, and transformation.
And today is called What is Hope? A lot of times we get confused with hoping. It's more like a wish than it is an actual reality. And today we just like to talk about how that transformed into my life and how that experience has helped my life even to better heights, because hope is a real thing. It's a palpable thing, something that we can actually practice.
All right. So let's go ahead and jump into these questions, and I would love to hear what you have for us today. So, my very first question today is going to be um, when every door is locked and the world has forgotten you, what's left to hope for?
Mm. With that in mind, all I can think about is my first night going into the cell on death row, because I heard the cell door slam behind me. And that was supposed to be the sound of finality. The sound of this was going to be the last place that I lived. This was going to be the last place that I breathed. It was not, as we know, because I'm sitting here. And the reason for that is because of hope. In the last episode, we talked about how honesty had to come before anything else. First of all, I had to know that I was without hope. I had to not only know that I was without hope, but some people would say, they like to use the term, well, you're up a creek without a paddle. That was me. I didn't have a boat. I didn't have a paddle. I didn't have nothing. And it was the creek that nobody wants to be in because of not only the smell, but the nastiness. When that happens, you have to take a look at yourself, or you have to build a construct in your mind that will help you get through the worst thoughts and predicament ever. I'm pretty sure that POWs experience this. You're not only locked up from any kind of freedom, but you're locked away from people who care about you. You're locked away from help, so to speak. And then there's whether it's a physical, a mental, an emotional type of barrage coming at you, with where a person has to think about every day, what does their life mean? What does it mean to care about someone? Are you cared for? What does it mean for you to move forward in life? Is there something to move forward to? And that's when the questions come in that I really am sentenced to die, and there may not be any way out of this.
So, with that being said, how did your addiction kind of uh, come into play with hope? Was your addiction something that, because you said you have to really ask yourself those questions, was your addiction something that was helping you avoid asking yourself those questions, or to really look within yourself to get the answers to those questions?
My addiction kept me from looking at things. I would put anything in my body that would change my mind or my mood so that I did not have to look at myself. But still, if I don't look at myself, if I don't see what's really going on, what's going to end up happening? Well, for what I've seen the other people on death row do, or what happened to them, was they got so involved in the minutia of what was happening in their day-to-day life that they didn't deal with the ultimate question of, why am I here? and what's going to happen next. It took me probably 2.5 years before I was able to actually look at that. And that happened because of an absence of any kind of chemicals or drugs or alcohol for a certain period of time.
So does for you did hope start as a little whisper, or was it more like a scream at you trying to get you to a good place?
It's a good question. I truly believe it was a whisper while I was using. When I'm adding alcohol or some other substance into my body and into my mental makeup, all I can then hear is the whisper. But with the absence of any kind of mood altering chemical, it becomes a scream. And the scream then becomes loud. And I think I had to deal with the scream when I went with the absence of any kind of chemicals. A lot of people think that you can't get drugs or alcohol when you're locked up and in prison. That's not true. If there is a will, there is a way. And I believe that today. I do. I believe that if you want to do something in life, you can do it. There is a way.
Yeah.
You just have to find that way.
Yeah. All right. So now I'm gonna ask a couple more maybe passive questions.
Okay.
When you were at your lowest, did hope feel like a cool joke or something only free people could afford?
I never thought about it as in free people could afford it. I thought about it as something somebody else had and I had no clue how to get it. It was sort of like a mystery. How could people function in spite of horrible negative circumstances and continue to have a smile on their face every day or find a reason to take care of themselves in the best way or look to the future and say, let's try to do something positive. I just didn't understand that. There were a few instances of people who had that going on. I was on death row with a guy named Ricky. We'll say Ricky S for now. Ricky had been in prison for another crime, and he had committed a murder that no one knew. They'd actually convicted another man of it, and that man had been sent to death row. And while Ricky was in prison for the other crime, which was something he could have got out for within 8 or 10 years, he found Jesus Christ as not only a savior, but his Lord. And we were just talking about the whispers and the screams. Well, Ricky cleaned up. He didn't have any drugs in his system. Now he had to deal with the screams. And one of the screams was he was going to let another man die for something he had done. And so he went to the authorities and said, hey, I did this. After a lot of proving process, he proved to them that he had actually done the crime, which made a lot of people look bad. But at the same time, when he went back to court and took that on, he pled guilty and told the jury that he actually deserved the death sentence. So they did give him that. And then after his direct appeals, he withdrew his appeals so that they would execute him within 90 days. He had the thought that he deserved the sentence that he would get. He knew the crime had been terrible. So, I mean, he spent the last couple of years of his life writing 80 or 90 people every day trying to give them hope. This man who had no hope, who was going to die, there was no doubt about it, on death row, got up every day and he smiled and he had a kind word. And I could not understand that.
Well, I think it's because, I mean, you said he had no hope, but I think it's he had no hope of seeing freedom in this realm, but he had the hope that through his actions and through his through his faith, he had hope for after.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
I think that is very, very beautiful. So
It was to me. It left an indelible mark upon me to watch that, and even more so to realize that I didn't have what he had.
was there a moment when you realized wishing wasn't enough, when you either acted or you gave up?
Yes. I tried to commit suicide a couple of times. They weren't very serious attempts. They were half-hearted because basically I was a coward. Didn't want to die, didn't want to face the pain or that I thought would be involved in actually doing myself in. The one time that was more serious, I took an amount of drugs that should have probably killed a horse. And I woke up and was sick and had the worst headache of my life for the next few days. But that was it. And never could understand why that didn't work. I tried to slit my wrists, things like that. So much that they put me in a psych ward for a couple of weeks. And I think that there was times that I realized, as a matter of fact, I can tell you this one instance. A guy, another inmate named Michael, came to my cell while I was on the psych ward, and I knew him because he had been on death row at one time and had gotten it turned over into a life sentence. And he came while I was on the psych ward to talk to me. I don't know why, but he said something about sometimes when you hit bottom, you can either lay there or you can bounce. I thought about that a lot. And I think that plus a couple of experiences where I came pretty close to dying made me think that maybe something else was worth a shot.
And what in in all of that, in your whole journey, we heard about like maybe the darkest thoughts that you had, which was that suicide was the answer. What was the thought that kind of sparked the journey to get closer, to have a relationship with God?
Ah, well, the thought was all the thoughts that came in when I was locked away from any kind of access to mind or mood altering chemicals. Like we said, the scream came in. Since I had nothing to mute the scream and make it a whisper anymore, I had to deal with it or go crazy. I was locked 23 hours a day in my cell at that point. And what do you do? There is no outlet. There's no stress reliever. There's deal with it. Go crazy. And in that process, we talked about honesty in the last episode. And in that process, I had a good look at myself. And I would continue to have better looks at myself along the way because growth doesn't happen in a straight line. For me, and for a lot of people that I know who have done some real work on themselves and changed, what's happened is that their growth has been a little bit here. Sometimes it's one step forward and two steps back, but it's the process of being in movement. It's not settling for what's happening around you. And it's not just my circumstance. Along the way in prison, I learned very quickly that prison was more than just steel and concrete. That's an easy thought of it when you say, oh, you were in prison. I was in prison. But the real prison I found was inside of me. Because that's what helped Ricky S. not be in prison. He had a hope even past death. He had a hope even for today and wasn't worried about what happened if he died. That hope was realized. You, to me, hope had to be something more than just a wish. You know, we all wish to be something. I think me and Jonathan been wishing that the lottery would come our way, but it ain't come. You know, but you know what? There's other hopes. I go to work every day. Now they don't give me a paycheck every day, but I have a hope that I'm going to get it on payday, and it's a lively hope because I keep working. And when I keep working, it's because it's almost an expectation that this will happen. But at the same time, it hasn't. So that's really a hope, you know. But the way I live with hope is that I believe that something is going to happen. I've learned that if you do good things will happen.
That's very beautiful. That is very
No, thanks.
beautiful. How did you trust other people with your hope when betrayal was always a possibility, especially in prison?
Mm. Well, other inmates, it wasn't very easy at first. um, I learned about this word repent, right? I would go to church and I would hear a preacher go, "You must repent or you're going to hell." And I'd be like, oh my gosh, you know, and in my heart, my mind, the way I thought and perceived this statement that came from a lot of, I believe, well-meaning preachers for the most part, was that, hey, if you step out of line, God's going to whack you one. I mean, that's kind of the persona that I got out of God. And I was like, you know, I'm scared of God. You know, when I was trying to seek God, there were so many good parts about having a higher power that knew you and loved you and wanted the best for you. It didn't equate to me with the guy with the baseball bat behind his back waiting to whack you one, you know? So I had a lot of faulty constructs, you know? So I didn't trust other inmates because most of the time you would look around and you would see a lot of craziness going on around you. And you would see how these people reacted in the crazy. And you'd be like, well, I don't want any of that. You know, that's not what I think I'm looking for. And then you had these anomalies like Ricky. And you'd be like, what is that? How do I get some of that?
Yeah.
You know? And I think it happens in everyday life. I think we see people every day who lose their job, have people who they love die. I think there's all kinds of bad situations where people have a hope. They have an expectation that something good is still going to happen. And we're like left wondering when we see this, where do I get that? How do I get that?
Yeah.
When I originally got clean and sober because I wanted to, because I asked God to help me, the first thing that I trusted was that no matter what I did, if I got honest with everybody about my thoughts and my emotions, then God would make it all right. And if he didn't, I would survive. So the first person I told all my truths to was the person I'd lied to most in my life, was my biological mother. And I really, matter of fact, you knew my biological mother.
Yes, I do.
So knowing her and knowing her mental constructs about life, telling her the truth about what happened the night of the murder, that I actually was a monster and those kind of things. I just expected that relationship to be over forever at that point. But I trusted beyond the thought process. I trusted God to make it right and to put me right. I didn't hear from her for a moment after I wrote this long letter straightening out all the major lies that I had had with her for years. And then I just kind of said, okay, God, it's on you.
How long? Because well, you're saying that you were basically like honest about what happened that night. So from approximately like how long was it from when you were sentenced to when you wrote this letter? How long was that process of being able to look within and then make that decision to be honest with your mother?
Right around 11 years in prison. Yeah. For the time that I had gotten off death row after almost 4 years to for the next 7 years, I had spent that time practicing knuckleheadism. I call it that for lack of better words, trying to be a prison boss, trying to sell people drugs, trying to buy drugs, trying to do drugs, put needles in my arm, helping other people to get needles in their arm, getting alcohol, loaning money, you name it. It was just about it. And that's what Kenneth did, because that's what happens when you don't practice hope.
So how did that go? The process of well, because I feel like at that point you might have broken down your relationship with your mother, and I'm assuming that might have also affected other relationships. How were you able to build back, and how did that differ from the relationship you had before?
Oh, wow. Um, after almost a week and a half of not hearing back from my mother after this letter, the chaplain calls me to his office. I'm like, well, this isn't good because this guy doesn't ever call me. I'm not the guy on his list he calls. So I go up there and I'm thinking, okay, something's bad's happened. They only call you when somebody's died in your family. So, all right. So I'm going up there and he calls me in his office. He said, you need to call your mother. I was like, how am I? He said, here's the phone. Give me your number. I'm going to call. And I was like, he said, she has been trying to get a hold of you, trying to get some message to you. All she told me to tell you was she forgives you and she loves you. That was like a huge burden. It was almost like the power, the God that I believe in, telling me, I got you. You trusted me and I'm going to trust you. So let me
That is
fast
huge.
forward. Huh?
I said that's huge because like you mentioned, I knew Nanny, and Nanny was very hard. Like she was just a very like so that it. I mean, yeah, that is amazing. I mean,
Huge.
she's your mother, but still, because I met Nanny and I know I knew who she was, like in her temperament and her character. That is wow.
Yes. Um, well, a little background on my mom so people can understand. My mother was on her own at age 13, and she was married 7 times, had 6 children, and there was a seventh that we only found about later that she had been raped when she was first on her own, and gave the child up for adoption because she could not see abortion as an answer. And as you know, my mother was very hard, tough as nails, could fight a man just like a man. And, you know, we learned a lot from her in those ways. And as crazy as I always thought she was, she also had some very good things about her too. She was loyal to a fault, but when she was done with you, she was done with you. And I really had thought at this point she was done with me. To hear those words just kind of, because I didn't have anybody else in the world at that moment. That moment was your husband actually had just been born the week before. And it was I used to celebrate and say that your husband was, God's gift to me for getting sober. So yes, I would say that. So I think that the end result of that is something that is that my mother and I actually became friends later on. It took a lot of hard years to change past, but work and a belief, a hope that we were going to get better. Now remember, this is a lady that kicked me out of my house when I was 12 years old, drove me to juvenile hall, took took me in and told those people, "You take him because I'm not," and left and got in her car. Yeah. So this is the kind of woman that my brothers now say that I'm the only one could ever understand. I'm like, no, I didn't understand her at all. I just became friends with her, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I had a very rocky relationship with my own mother growing up, especially during my teen years. Um, but I think one thing that I understood once I had my children was my mother also became a mother at a very young age. And she came from a country where, she had just lost her father and she had no one here. She didn't know the language. She had no one here. So she did it all on her own. And what helped me really get past whatever was in my heart that was not allowing me to have that good relationship with my mother was she is just doing the best that she can. Even if I don't understand it, even if I don't agree with it, she she did what she could. She did what she could, and she's also just someone else trying to figure it out. And she has her own struggles, and she's got some, you know, some experiences that she can never, completely forget. So the only thing that I can do is sympathize with my mother and not be one of the people who is giving her a hard time because she's just trying. And
Right.
she's gonna get it wrong. And I've learned to kind of adopt that same mentality with the people around me. And it's kind of hard with some more than with others. Uh, but yeah, just kind of in that aspect, I've kind of just learned that we're all just trying. And one thing that we all want is connection. We all want to feel like we belong somewhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny that you say that all we need is that connection. Last night we were having dinner with me and my circle of trust is what we call it sometimes around here. And we were talking about some not good relationships in family. And we sat around saying, "Hey, this is our family." I believe today that you can choose your family. You can choose those people that you do have in your circle of trust. And you can learn that just because somebody is your bloodline does not mean that you have to allow them to get close to you. Or in the hope aspect, as we're talking about, you can always hold the door open and say, "You're welcome to come into the circle of trust, into this connection and into this relationship where we connect in special ways, but we both need to be okay with how the other treats each of us."
Yeah.
And that's what we have. You are in that circle for me. You and your husband and those two beautiful little girls. So um, I think also as well that taught me that I could trust providence, God, a power greater than myself to take care of me, not just physical needs, but mental and emotionally. Because it was shortly after that I was in prison and broke. And I'm sitting here trying to walk the right way, the right path, but I know how to go make money in prison. I can gamble. I can go buy some drugs and resell them. I can do all kinds of things that would get me in all kinds of trouble. And had this conversation with God where God said, I don't want you to do that. And I was like, yeah, but I'll starve. That's exactly the words I told him. And I turned around and somebody that I kind of got along with, somebody who worked in the kitchen, brought me a kitchen, what I called a kitchen sandwich. It's pretty good in those days. You got a kitchen sandwich, you were doing good, and just gave it to me. Somebody else might have paid $5 for it, but gave it to me. And it was like God saying inside of me, I always got you. Always. Just another evidence of what hope actually does. You know, I like to think of it in the Bible. So I don't want to go overly religious with people because I'm not religious, but I have faith in Jesus. So I want to make clear that there's a distinction. Am I a Christian? Yes. But I'm not a Christian just to be a Christian. I'm a Christian because I believe in Jesus Christ and I want to walk the way he does and I have a relationship with him. That's why. But in saying that, I would like to make it clear that God has always performed for me, but I haven't paid attention. He's always given me a reason to actively, and I think that's a good word, actively hope for something better. And that's why I sit here today. There was a vacuum created by honesty because now I've let go of all the garbage that I've filled my spirit and soul with. Now something has to fill that void. And that void has been filled by active hope. It's by saying, hey, I believe this, therefore I will act upon this. That's hope. You can get it confused with faith. Faith is just a decision. It's the decision part of hope, but hope is what you start with. It's what you end with. Anyways, I'm done.
To you, in your opinion, because obviously you encountered these very dark moments and in a very dark place, what is more dangerous, believing a false promise or believing nothing at all?
Wow, that is a very deep and good question. You know that? I'm going to say what's more dangerous is believing something false. Because believing something false will lead you to do things that don't agree with the truth. If you believe something false, as a matter of fact, our society is chock full of people following false narratives. With all due respect, I want to give honor to the dead. Charlie Kirk was a man that a lot of people didn't like because they say that he was either a racist or he either believed in doing things that weren't good for other people. I've went and checked those things out. It only takes a few seconds to go online and search out these narratives that people build about the guy. And you know what? When they're taken in context, these things aren't racist at all. Not at least in my estimation. But if I was to believe the false narratives about him, I would say, oh, he said this. Well, he may have said that, but how was it said? Was there a meaning or an intention behind what he was saying? Was he saying it for a purpose? These are good questions to ask. In the Garden of Eden, what the snake spoke to Eve wasn't such a horrible question. But you got to think how fast a little bit of rebelliousness worked. First of all, a lot of things happened in just a few minutes because of one lie, or it was really misdirected. It was, did God really say? He just questioned somebody's faith, somebody's hope. And because God's not standing there in front of you, you say, oh, maybe this is not right. I don't know. I think you need to research it out. A false narrative will lead you to hurt someone that you didn't need to do. A false narrative can destroy not only your own life, but a lot of people's, and bring a lot of pain and heartache as well. But believing nothing, well, it's probably going to do some damage, but I don't think it'll do as much. That's my take.
It's your take. Okay. Well, I think it is like what they say, right? If you believe in nothing, you'll fall for anything. And I don't know. I want to believe that people are inherently good, and there's just things that they go through that make them make that pushes them to make bad decisions, to take bad steps. And that's why I do believe in what the name of this podcast is, which is Deemed Redeemable, because I do think you talked about the word repent earlier, and I don't know if you ever out flat said the definition of what repent is, but it's to change your mind.
That's it.
So I think that anyone can really do that, from no matter how far gone you think you might be. You can always just change your mind.
So, something, I'd like to speak about what you just said. I used to believe that people were inherently good. I did. The Bible told me something different.
Ooh,
It
okay.
said, yeah, this is one of those things that have to be taken in context, or you can get a false narrative. But the Bible actually says that because of, let's call it the dis-ease that has infected my human nature as a man, human being, that I'm not actually inherently good anymore. I'm actually devoid, or actually bad. But God had created me to be good. See, this is where we get it, I think, confused. God originally intended for man to be a good human being, or a good creation. Let's say it that way. Yet, we're not. I think that we have that natural sense that we're like, oh yeah, but we should be good. It's sort of like when we get really quiet inside, we know that there's something else out there. Even if you don't know God, or you don't believe in God, you know that there's something out there. Even when we were kids, we kind of just knew when somebody told us it was God. It probably made sense at first, but then we get these false narratives, and then we don't know. We get twisted and we get turned, and then we're like, well, I'm not sure. And we get facts and science mixed up, and which way things are. And now all of a sudden we have a convoluted world. Everybody's going their own way instead of everybody coming together, which would be good, I think, in a lot of senses. So the Bible tells me that humans are bad now. They're like infected with this disease. There's not a whole lot that can be changed. As a matter of fact, it's almost the same predicament or situation you would think of me being on death row. Hey, I'm guilty of murder. I have a sentence of death pronounced over me. I'm done. Hey, that's what it is. The Bible says the same thing about the whole human race. It says, hey, you done something messed up. The sentence is death. It's what it is. But like you said, the purpose of this podcast is to say, something is deemed redeemable. And I believe God said the same thing about me. He said, hey, I'm not done with you. I take broken things and make them useful. You know, I think he says it about all of us.
I think so too. But going back just a little bit, when you asked God to free you, were you prepared for silence? Or what did that silence, if you did experience it, what did it teach you?
Oh, wow. I asked God to free me a lot of times, by the way. I was like, please help me. But the
I think
moment
anyone
that,
would in that situation. Anyone would. If you didn't
yeah,
believe in God, you believe in God in that moment, and you beg.
another guy I was on death row with, I won't give his first name, his last name was Hofstetler. He had read in the Bible where, you know, if you ask for something in the name of Jesus or commanded something in that name, then it had to happen. And he walked up with the Bible in his hand to the guard and told him, hey, this is what this says. Let me go in the name of Jesus. They didn't open the door, you know. So,
I didn't imagine they would.
but it does
What a
make you
loophole
think.
that would be.
Yeah, it does make you think. Um, Back to that. All right, I got thrown off with Hofstadler, but Hofstadler. The question again was that.
When you asked God to free you, were
Oh
you prepared
yes,
for silence? And if you did experience that silence, what did it teach you?
I didn't experience silence when I honestly asked him. I was sober 2 years, a little over 2 years. It was somewhere in between the 2 and 3 year mark. I was in an AA meeting in a prison that was maximum security, and I was coming as you come out of the room where they were allowing us to have an a 12-step meeting. Let's not use the term of it. Anyways, I came out, and the reason that they shake you down when you come out is because you're in there with a person from the free world who could have brought you something in, and they want to pat search you at least. So as I'm coming out, we've got these lines of inmates and all these guards. They're patting us down, and one female guard that works in that area, everybody knows she has a reputation for trying to hurt a man while pat searching, and that's using her hands as karate chops, moving up the legs. Yeah, and she did to me, and I held it in, and it was I was in excruciating pain from it. Now
I'm sorry, it's kind of funny.
it's, I mean, I guess it is. Um,
I'm not laughing at the pain. It's just that she had a reputation that is
yeah,
crazy.
she had a reputation, but you didn't have any choice because she was on one line and they had already separated us into groups. So I didn't have a choice. So the only thing I could do was cause a huge scene, or I could just think, okay, maybe she won't hurt me. She did, but it was one of those things where while I was waiting on the other inmates to get through being pat searched, I started praying at that moment because it was that thing where, God, you got to get me out of here. You know, I'd spent the last couple of years at this point believing, hoping, actively hoping, and I knew that I was changing. I knew something good was happening inside me. And I believed that I was ready, but I also wouldn't have admitted it. But the truth is that I also knew that I really wasn't ready at that point. But I heard God speak in my spirit, inside my soul, and say, I'm going to free you, but I'm going to free you inside first. Not really what I wanted to hear from God. I wanted to hear, yeah, gonna get you out. Just, hey, we're going to perform 16 miracles and pop, you're going to be out the door. That's really what I wanted to hear from God. I did not want to hear, I'm going to free you inside first. But sitting here today, if that process had not happened, I wouldn't be sitting here today. If that process had not happened, I would not be the person sitting here today. And if that process had not happened, I think that I would have already gone back into prison had I been released. And maybe with more people hurt. I don't know.
That is a very good reflection because we live in a society where that happens very often. People that are incarcerated and released often end up back in jail
Mm-hmm.
and they're reoffenders. So I this is nothing to do with the topic, but what do you think, as someone who did experience the justice system very close, what do you think? And I think you experienced it more than most, right? What do you think is something that we could do as a society to help so that people have don't reoffend, so people can come out of prison and stay free?
Whew. Yeah, you asked for a lot right there, young
We can
lady.
absolutely hit on this in another episode. I just because it's
I can give you quick synopsises of things that I've learned over time. Um, okay, I'll give you some things and I'll make kind of short statements about it. One, people who believe in God quit throwing Bibles and literature at inmates. There's more Bibles inside prison than you'd ever believe. They don't need another Bible. What they need is you, the real you. That's what they need. They need to have relationships with people who are good, who do know God, who are doing good things, because most of these people have no clue how to be good or godly. What they need is relationships. If you throw a good apple in bad apples, it's going to become bad. And if all these apples in prison are bad, how can they get good? Just use common logic sense. The programs that are being thrown at inmates or convicts or however you want to call them these days, they're half-hearted attempts. There's money being spent, but there's only a few individuals who get the benefit of them because the prison system is not built on let's help the person change. The prison system is basically built on let's punish this person for doing bad. That's what it's built on. And a lot of people profit off that. Stop the profiteering of prisons. It doesn't help. And then you ask why the person comes out and he reoffends. Do you know what the horrible statistics are? The horrible statistics are 1 in 33 people who try to get recovery actually get it. And that's a low number. It's probably even higher. Okay? 1 in 4 people in the United States, okay, have somebody that's involved with the justice system. You know? But we spend, not a billion, not 10 billion, but 60 plus billion every year in the United States to lock people up. What are we doing? That's my tax money. That's your tax money. I don't want to be spending on it. You mean there's actually another way? What blew my mind was I took business courses. And when I opened, which book was it? Was it finance? Yes. No. Yes, it was finance. It was finance where they were talking about failed businesses. And they talked about the model of incarcerating people for drugs and alcohol related offenses. It was the war on drugs, the most failed policies ever. Not just a little bit, but ever. Back, I don't know, I think it was the Clinton administration. They were paying states to lock more people up. People don't know this. If they would only read the bills that are being passed in their Senate, in their Congress, they would know this. Okay? There had to be another act to counteract what Bill Clinton did. Of course, in his mind, it was labeled under 5 or 6 different things, and most people, they don't have time to sit and read a 1,000-page document to know what's actually in there, but they actually did. It's actually something that happened. It can be researched. you know yeah, there's so many things that could change prisons.
That's interesting because
Plus, yeah, you need to pay these people who are doing these jobs, the hard jobs. Teachers and nurses, hey, look, I'm all about a football player and making a bunch of money because people want to see him play, but you also want your kid to grow up with a good teacher. Pay him. Get off my soapbox now.
no, well, I think it's interesting that you bring up the basically like the epic failure that was a war on drugs, because I remember and I don't know if this was something that they did when you were in school, but I remember fourth and fifth grade doing the DARE program, which was basically supposed to keep us away from drugs and alcohol. And I don't know a single person who went through that program that doesn't laugh at it now. It's like, well, if only they knew that I drink often, if only they knew that I smoke often.
When I grew up, it was the Scared Straight program. Okay. They took me into a jail. Well, let me tell you my state of mind when you bring me up into a jail. I'm scared. You know exactly how I'm scared. And I have people yelling at me, telling me what they do to me and all this stuff. I'm not hearing anything they've got to say. All I know is that if you touch me, somebody's suing somebody, And and of course, if I'm already in a rebellious state, you want to take me around other people who are locked up just for being in, and you're gonna scare me from that. It just Some things just don't make sense. Let me tell you what makes sense. One person practicing hope or faith, helping another who needs to learn how to practice hope and faith. These 12-step groups, that's what they do. Okay. Yeah. One person who's been through the ringer and they found the way out. Now they try to help one other person. Okay. And if the person doesn't want to be helped, they don't waste time trying to convince that person. They go on to the next one that does want help. And they're willing to share their life and experience with them. But they're not willing to bankroll their excursions. They're only there to give them experience, strength, and hope. And then that person, if he uses that experience, strength, and hope, can use it, get clean, get sober, get his life back on track, and then turn around and help somebody else. How in the world can a person who's never experienced prison, who's never committed a crime, who's never been in the dark depths of despair, okay, in life, make laws and come up with great ideas to help people who have been down those roads get back? It can't happen.
Yeah.
It takes one person helping another with experience, strength, and hope.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we kind of lack in our society right now is that we all have opinions about various different things, be it immigration, be it religion, and whatnot. But I feel like social media has been a great tool for many things, but it has also been detrimental in some aspects. And one of those is that we have kind of dehumanized a lot of problems. And
Yeah.
how we, like what I said earlier, was we all crave that connection. We all crave to belong somewhere, to be a part of something. And when you dehumanize certain things, uh, when you're looking at problems just as policies, you're not looking at the human, you're not looking at who is actually being affected behind those policies. And like you mentioned, there's no way someone who has never experienced that, who has never been in those situations, can make policies that will effectively change how things are being done.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think it's such a travesty, especially around, political time, political, however you say it, political. um, I get such a sense of tragedy when I see somebody going for votes and saying, I'm going to be tough on crime. And I'm sitting here saying, you've been tough on crime for 80 years. Show me what it's done. Show me the money. Because the consensus is, ain't seen no change. You can get as tough as you want. You'll scare somebody for the moment. But as soon as they're away from that, they will continue their ways because they're just looking for a way out of what misery you're trying to bring to them. They're already in enough misery. And that misery don't go away when you go away. It's like I learned when I was training dogs that there's a lot of ways to train dogs. When I grew up, you forced the dog to do what you wanted it to do. That was called molding. Well, some smart person realized that you can't train animals like that really effectively. Sure, they'll do what you want for the moment, but as soon as you're not there, they're going to go back to their old behavior because they found some relief, something that caused that behavior that they're doing to be okay. You have to give them a countering position. See, in my life today, I have a choice. I don't have to go pick up a drink or a drug. I don't have to. It's an option. It's always an option. But I now don't have to. When I first got clean, or before I got clean, I didn't have that option. I didn't have that option because it wasn't in here. And it wasn't in here. I didn't have enough hope for that. Okay? These people who are continuing to go down these roads, it's because they don't have an option yet. They don't see it. They're not going to see it from the guy saying, get tough on crime. They're not going to see it from, one of the books that I read, Recovery, says frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message that holds people using has to have depth and weight, meaning people who love me, they're crying, but I can't hear the emotional part of it. I'm already confused emotionally. So yes, I feel bad because you're crying or because you don't want me to go back into it. But just as the dog who got the first piece of meat off the counter and got away with it, the first time I started using and getting in trouble and got away, I learned, hey, every once in a while, it's okay because I can get high, I can feel better, and I can get away. I have to have an option to my thought process. It's what recovery programs do. They say, hey, you have an option. So, anyways.
So, if someone is listening to us right now and is standing on this edge, what is the smallest spark that you would hand them?
I would try to walk them through the worst scenarios that's going on in their mind. The worst fear we have, I don't know if it was Churchill or not, but it might have been FDR, said the only fear we have to fear is fear itself. God says in the book 100 times, don't fear, you know, and most of the time when we go through experiences that we believe are going to be the very worst, the most horrible thing in the world actually aren't. But until we've walked through the experience, sort of like if I think the sky is going to fall tomorrow, if I don't do something or if I act a certain way, I need somebody to walk through that and say, hey, let's really look at that thinking process. So when I'm talking to somebody who doesn't have hope, I want to find out why they don't have hope. I want to find out what they're most afraid of right now in order to do something that betters their life. You see, hope keeps me going to work tomorrow. Hope also keeps me saying, I don't want to do anything that would jeopardize my family, my home, my friends, those things that I cherish now today. So my hope is I'm always doing something to try to better myself. My hope is that I'm going to grow up and I'm going to see your two little girls get married and have wonderful lives. Whether they do, I don't know, but I'm working towards that. Anything I can throw my 2 cents in for, I'm going to be there for. At the same time, a lot of people cannot see. They have what do they call it? Tunnel vision, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Where all they can see is the one outcome. They can't see another. And that's where despair comes in. Our mental constructs, they're horrible. Our belief systems, they're not working. Or we wouldn't be in this situation. It's just like me. I couldn't see past anything for a while. So all I seen was a life of let's do drugs. Let's be a rebellious person in prison. I have lots of names for that. I don't know if we're rated R or X now. But there's options. Life can be beautiful. Life can be healthy. Life can be good. Life can feel good again without taking drugs, without doing horrible things. And what I always look at when I look at hope is if that person over there did something to make his life better, then I can too. If that person was able to get through a bad experience, I can too. What would make him different than me? If you really think about it, think about any president. Think about any superstar. Maybe I can't jump as high as LeBron James, but I'm sure if I really wanted to, I could play basketball better than I do because people are getting better all the time at things. I just have to do what they do. You know what I mean? It's like if you want to be a doctor, you go do what doctors do. They go to school. They learn about things.
Mm-hmm.
They become doctors and they hang out with other doctors. So I want to be a good person. I want to be a godly person. I want to be things that give to life. Well, that means I got to hang around with good people. It means I got to hang around with godly people. It means I got to do the things that people add to life and don't take from it. All right. Well, you keep getting me on soapboxes. What's up with this?
I'm just asking questions, but it's interesting because hearing you talk, it just reminded me of Lot's wife, and it just reminds me that looking back is one of those things that it's hard not to do, not to look back, but it's the moving forward with faith and obedience and with hope of what is coming.
Yeah.
Just listening to you talk, that's just what came to my mind.
What I thought about when you said Lot's wife, I thought about, well, the real lesson of Lot's wife is it's not that you don't look back, it's how you look back. She will look back because she wanted that to bring that life with her.
Mm-hmm.
You see, we're here to look back so that we can have a brighter future away from that mess we've been in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that concludes our episode today.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Redeemable. join us next time as we continue exploring stories of redemption, faith, and transformation. I'm Cleveland.
And I'm Kenneth. And next time, we're going to talk about what is faith.
Until next time.